Well, hi everyone, I am Luckhead and I'm making this video because a new Heroes of Might and Magic game was announced, and honestly it looks awesome. I was so hyped that I started watching every new piece of information and media that was released, trying to figure out what we are going to see in the game, and well, I think I've managed to spot actually almost every single unit from each faction and many of their upgrades too. So as it took some effort, I just wanted to share my findings with the community and throw some theories about all of these units too while we wait for the game. First of all, the map in general feels pretty alive, and there's a lot of movement going on, but not everything that feels alive is actually a playable unit. So for example, we get some sentient beings that actually act like landmarks, like the hand gremlin or goblin, the leprechaun, or the sentient tree for example. There are also many animals and critters, like sheep and pigs, and dead versions of them, some weird floating starfishes and lava worms too. These animals seem to be just decorative. By the way, a small detail observing the resources found in maps is that while most classic materials are coming back, it looks like sulfur is missing, at least on the content that has been shown so far. And speaking of sulfur, a faction that traditionally used lots of it was Dungeon, and so far we have seen almost every unit from them, as the 7 creature tiers were shown during a developer's Q&A with Lexiab. The thing is, there might be more creatures that we don't know about, as there is an additional unit shown in the trailer that has always been associated with Dungeon, and I've spotted at least 8 creature types for some other factions too. So for Dungeon we have seen so far the Troglodytes, with one upgrade said to deal more damage while the other one splashes acid when hit. We got an assassin-like Dark Elf unit. This game takes place in Jedam, which was seen in Might and Magic 8, and there are Dark Elves there. So these aren't the Asian version of Dark Elves, we are in Enroth, but a past version of it. Next we got a Dancer unit, which is a female Dark Elf holding a chakram, and I think they will be a range unit. In fact, there is a sequence where a Jesper dancer seems to be summoning a meteor while doing a dance, but this is speculation as it could be an idle animation and the meteor being a spell by a hero hidden from this scene. We see the return of some other classic dungeon creatures like the Minotaurs, Medusas and Hydras. This trio comes from Greek mythology, and this version of dungeon in general seems to draw a lot of inspiration from Greek or Roman themes. Minotaur Lords are said to be able to buff close allies, while Minotaur Warriors get stronger when they're hit, and we have seen a Minotaur Lord dealing a multi-target melee attack. Medusas are back as ranged units, and at least the Medusa Queens seem to have an area of effect attack, which seems to be a recurrent mechanic for many shooting units, as we will see. Finally, worth noting, the upgrade names for the Hydra come from Ulysses' Odyssey, where Charybdis and Scylla were monsters living very close to each other, so we got even more Greek influence. And finally, you can't have Dungeon without its dragons, especially the Black Dragon. The alternate upgrade is called Albino Dragon, and while during the reveal all units got some red lighting on them, on the map they see a bit more albino. I'm not sure if we have seen the base version. There is a dragon that could be that on the trailer, but it looks different enough, so I'm showing it later in the video. So, this seems to be the 7 creatures from Dungeon, but as I said earlier, there seems to be an 8th one, which will be what clearly looks like a Beholder/Evil Eye, another recurrent Dungeon unit. Now, this could be many things. It could be a neutral creature with Dungeon alignment, it could belong to a different faction, but I doubt that, as the other factions are already crowded, as we will see later in the video. It could be a summon unit, or maybe even the dungeon version of Ballista. It could be many things, but I want to leave the speculation door open for the possibility of maybe an extra unit per faction that could replace an existing one, something like maybe some of the unit towers are in a pool with another unit and you choose 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 for example. We have seen choices like that before in Heroes 4 and also Heroes 7. So it could be a possibility, and the reason why I think this could happen is that there are other factions with a similar problem. And one of those factions will be the Temple, which is your typical heaven/castle faction. We have already been shown 8 different creatures for this faction, and 7 of them have been shown with their upgrades. Some of the typical units from this archetype are coming back, like the swordsmen that have been shown with their 2 upgrades. One of the upgrades reminds me a bit of the Heroes 3 Crusaders actually, though the image is a bit blurry. We also got to see a couple of variants of marksmen slash crossbowmen, which now seems to have some sort of bird on their shoulder, and I wonder if the bird will be related to their skills. At least one of the variants has been said to be able to shoot twice with a skill, but the skill requires some sort of build-up. What seems to be a new unit is some sort of female light priestess slash sorceress, maybe a vestal, and we've already seen all of her variants. There seems to be a cult of the sun in Jedam, so they're probably related to that, and I think they will be able to buff their allies, as the devs have mentioned that Temple's theme will revolve around buffs and synergies with buffs. The Griffins make their return too, with armored upgrades that look like Royal Griffins in a darker version, which could be a Battle Griffin. Then we have a female Battle Monk or War Cleric that is actually a melee unit, using some sort of Blessed Flail. This is another unit that I suspect will be able to cast buffs on her team. The last human unit will be a return of the classic cavalry units. We know that at least the unupgraded version is called Light Cavalry. I don't know if light here refers to weight or alignment, but it would be a fun play on words if the upgrades were called something like Heavy Cavalry and Radiant Cavalry. A new unit that got some fun stalking is what seems like some sort of Celestial Archer. This is an angel. This looks like some energy being inside a hollow armor wielding a bow. This creature has been shown using both single target projectiles and RF effect shots. We even got to see a variant version that looks like a darker or decayed design, which might hint at some more severe or inquisitorial branch of the temple. And finally, the 8th creature that we have seen from this faction. Now this looks like an actual angel with heavy influences from the Seraphs seen in Heroes 6 and 7 wielding 2 different blades. I don't think this is an alternate of the Celestial Archer, as they don't even look like they are the same species, and normally upgrades look like more elaborate models of their base versions with the same poses and animations. We haven't seen variants for it yet. We have seen them in the adventure map, but summonable and neutral units can be found there too, so it doesn't confirm that this is a proper unit from a town, and it still could be many things. But yeah, this faction will feel incomplete if these angels aren't their tier 7 creature, which will relegate the Celestial Archers to tier 6, I guess. And following that thought, now here's another faction that, while we've only seen 7 of their creatures so far, an 8th one has been heavily hinted at, and this faction will be Necropolis. The first creature of course will be the skeletons, and just like in Heroes 5, we got a ranged variant and an armored one to sponge more damage. Then we got some zombie hounds. This type of unit was commonly seen in Inferno, but with the redesign as a more insectoid faction, it made sense to place hounds in Necropolis, as many fantasy settings employ similar undead hounds. They seem to use some spectral bit, which I guess one of the upgrades will need, as it seems to be headless. Ghosts are also coming back, and all of their variants seem to be holding some sort of lantern, which is an element that has been associated with ghosts in other fantasy wars before, and I wonder if they will use them for their skills. Now, very interesting new creature type is what has been called by the devs as Gravediggers, and we have seen a couple of versions of them too. This unit has been said to be able to summon skeletons, and I think it's a cool addition that brings some utility instead of being just another mid-shelled slot like a zombie unit, for example. Liches are also coming back. We have seen a couple of variants of them too, and at least one of them seems to have an RF effect projectile, which seems to be a recurring theme. Also, I really dig their melee attack animation. And speaking of returning units, here are the Death Knights / Dread Knights, and we've seen the 3 variants too, with a more basic version and other 2 with purplish and cyan colored auras respectively. The last Necropolis unit that we've seen so far in the game is what looks like a bone dragon. The anatomy of the head, torso and arms look very similar to other shown dragons, with small eyes near the snout. It seems to be missing its wings though, probably decayed, but this wouldn't be the first time we got a wingless dragon. So that will make 7 units from this faction that have been shown, but as I said, there seems to be another creature that has been hinted at a lot, and this is also a creature that has been present in every single iteration of Necropolis. Of course, I am talking about vampires. And we actually got art for a couple of them, although they might be hero portraits. Plus, there is a Victorian mansion emanating blood in the Necropolis town screen, so it will make a lot of sense if you could hire vampires there. Some devs have even playfully hinted at them, which will keep the 8 creatures theory going. But let's put theories aside and let's take a look at the brand new faction. This faction has been hinted by the devs as something that will be rebuilt in the future, but so far we've seen more from them than we've seen from some officially announced factions like Hive or Sylvan. We got their town screen and at least 7 different types of units already shown in game, along with many of their upgrades. This faction seems to have a theme of ice mixed with deep sea creatures, and some fans are speculating that they could be the Bori, which are the original elves of Erathia, also known as the Snow Elves, and their nation happens to be located in Jedam, which was the setting for Might and Magic 8, and this game takes place on a past version of Jedam. So we have to wait for more details, but that's a pretty interesting connection if you ask me. Now for the creatures that seem to belong to this faction, we got a couple of sea creatures like these floating jellyfish monsters that kind of remind me of the Wind Rider enemies from Guild Wars, and we've also seen some variants of what seems to be a flying stingray creature. The humanoid units from this faction all seem very unique. We got these knights riding some sort of sea slags or maybe eels. One of the variants seems to have multiple tongues, and they all seem to leave some icy trail. They look a bit like spiritual successors of the Grim Riders from Heroes 5. We've also seen this sort of priestess slash sorceress slash matriarchs that got huge tentacles sprouting from their heads, and actually they seem to walk on those tentacles as their feet don't even touch the ground. All of the variants are holding an item that will probably act as some sort of magic catalyst, so I will expect them to be a ranged unit and maybe also a spellcaster. And the third humanoid unit seems to be some sort of cryomancer mixed with a super saiyan. Honestly, everything about these guys just scream badass, with their looks, their pose and their animations. I don't think we have seen anything like them before in a Heroes game, honestly, and they look really cool, pun intended. This other unit seems to be a mix of sea monster and alien creature. It has lots of tentacles, wings, a head with some bioluminescent lights and a weird mandible. Each variant seems to have a different seaweed color too. Interesting design nonetheless, although it's a bit hard to tell what's going on with them. The last creature we have seen so far from this faction will be this corpulent humanoid with amphibian features sitting on a throne that is briefly seen in the trailer before he creates a huge magical explosion. There are also a couple of variants of it found in the map on different shots, so we can confirm this is a chunk creature. We don't know if this will be the strongest creature from the new faction. It looks like, at least offensively, it can be a powerhouse. We've only seen 7 creatures from this faction so far, so we might be missing some sort of Leviathan, Kraken or Sea Dragon, but this could be a good candidate for a Tier 7 spot. Next up we got a new take on a classic faction. So in this game, instead of the more traditional iteration of Inferno with imps, demons and other archetypical creatures, we got the Hive, which apparently is some sort of insect faction that has been corrupted by demons. This main theme makes some units a bit hard to differentiate at a distance from each other. Particularly we got 3 different types that at first glance I wasn't sure if they were related to each other, like different variants of the same creature, but I ended up finding at least 2 variants of each family, which means they belong to 3 different types of creatures. The first ones will be these winged insects that have big fly eyes. They remind me a bit of a mix between Tentomon and Cauterimon from the Digimon series. Next we got another bipedal demonic insect. They look bulkier with big claws, horns, multiple eyes, a flaming tongue that seems to always stick out of their mouth, something that looks like a ponytail, and 2 big stingy appendages coming from their back. They seem to have a front flip attack animation where they spin hitting their opponents with those stings. And another creature that I at first thought could be related with the previous one, but at closer inspection clearly isn't, is this thing that stands on 4 legs with a back end that reminds me a bit of an earwig or maybe an oil beetle with a sting. We have seen another flying creature, and I hope at least one of the variants is called a firefly, because, well, it flies and has fire. I think we've only seen one version of them, but I guess this could be a new take on classic dragonflies repurposed to this demonic insect faction. Another pure back will be these volcanic spiders, and we can see 3 different versions with different patterns and crowns. Also, I almost missed this one, as I think it's only been seen in a single shot, but you can clearly see it looks like some sort of magma worm with antlers or maybe a snail, and I think it's coming from the ground, but it's a bit hard to tell. It looks bigger than other creatures though. And the 7th and so far last creature will be this sort of amalgam of different insects and a humanoid demonic torso wielding a scythe. So far, this is the one creature that resembles a demon the most, and the fact that it is shown fighting an angel makes me think it might be the faction's top creature, but we still don't know too much about this faction. And speaking about the faction that we need to know a lot more about, I got a bunch of creatures that could either be neutral units or maybe belong to the Sylvan faction. There are some that I'm pretty sure belong to Sylvan, and I will get to them, but for now I'm going to show a few of the ones that I think are true neutral creatures. The first one will be the Halflings. Halflings have been neutral before and they don't seem to fit with the Temple factions, and they look too dressed and civilized to belong with this game's Sylvan either. Next one will be what seems to be the game's cute mascot. I'm not really sure what this thing is, maybe some sort of magic familiar. I think they're neutral instead of Sylvan, as some have speculated, as Sylvan's kind of fiery creatures tend to look a bit more wild and untamed in this game. Also, Sylvan already has too many low tier candidates, and this doesn't look like a powerful monster. And here's where we got a handful of creatures that could all belong to Sylvan, or maybe none of them does. There are arguments in favor and against for each of them. We got this huge flying serpent that resembles some kind of Quetzalcoatl. It even got some ornaments that seemed to be inspired by Mesoamerican culture, right? Sylvan in this game has this tribal and wild theme, so I think this has a chance to be a part of the faction, but I'm not completely sure, especially because we have some other candidates for tier 6 and 7 creatures already in place. Next, there is this dragon, which at first I thought might be the unupgraded version of the black and albino dragons from Dungeon, but the design is different enough for me to think this belongs to a different branch of dragons, particularly its head and color scheme. Now, is this related to gold dragons previously seen in Sylvan factions? Could be, or it could be something else, so at least for now I'm not ready to claim which faction, if any, these monsters belong to. Speaking of dragons, this guy here is totally a fairy dragon. The devs themselves have talked about the smaller and redesigned return of fairy dragons, and yeah, this one completely fits their description. Fairy dragons were neutral in Heroes 3, and they belong to the equivalent of Sylvan in Heroes 4, so they could end up going either way, I guess. They don't look like high-tier creatures though. But something that really looks like a high-end unit is the Phoenix. We see them casting a huge fire explosion during the trailer, and also during a portion of the cinematic, and some of them show up in the map in some shots. I'm very close to actually labeling them as Sylvan, but I think I will need some extra evidence to be completely sure, as they've been neutral summons in some iterations, and the one in the cinematic could be attacking both sides. Another argument for them being Sylvan is that the models found in the adventure map look like they could be variant versions, and only 10 units have variants, but this might be what they look like when their light effects are off, so I can say for sure. And now for the units that I'm certain belong to the Sylvan faction, we have many that appear on the official art fighting against Necropolis, and we have seen them in game already. So far, Sylvan is probably the faction that we know the least about. We don't even have their turn screen yet, but at least we got this art and the clips from the cinematic featuring them. What I assume will be their tier 1 unit is this creature that seems to be a redesign on sprites, looking a bit more chubby, almost like a flying plant armadillo, and one of them is seen in the art next to the Sylvan hero. Then probably their tier 2 unit, that looks like the backbone of their infantry in both the cinematic and the official art, are these female fawn warriors. And at first I thought there were 2 separate tiers of them, because some are wielding a sword and others a bow. But if you look at the models and their poses, they are clearly variations of each other. They are rigged the same way, and the only thing that changes is the hand that holds a weapon. you could change those items and they will fit perfectly. In Heroes 5 we had a couple of ranged units with alternate upgrades that lost the ability to shoot in exchange for other skills, and I think that's what's going to happen here. Another unit that is present in the art is this sort of bulky druid covered in mushrooms, maybe some sort of troll or ogre magi, or just some bulkier faun or a dendroid. They have bestial legs, they seem to be magic casters, but we don't know too much about them. The fourth creature that we can see in the art and also in game is this rock monster. They seem to be living rock formations standing on 4 legs. One of them looks like it has ramming horns and the other features more vegetation. Interestingly, both have some sort of orifice on their backs, so perhaps they could act as some sort of nature-based mortars. These scaly stacks don't appear in the art, but we have already seen a couple of versions of them and they might even have some Kirin-esque features. At least they remind me a bit of the Kirins from Guild Wars. The Asian games had Kirins, but they were different from this design. And finally there are 2 other creatures that, although I've only been able to catch a single version of each one, they just look like they fit too well with the Sylvan theme, to the point that it would be really weird if they weren't Sylvan unit. The first one will be this bulky forest warden that looks like a mix of armored humanoid and dendroid with a big sword, and it just looks like what Sylvan will employ as a tankier unit. And then at the last we've seen these giant flowers in some shots, and they even appear on the map. If you look closely, it seems like there is a bean in the middle of the petals with long antennas shaped like the flower's stigma and stamen, and the whole thing seems to be levitating. So it looks like the giant flower is just the decorative cover for a smaller creature in the middle of it, but the resolution isn't too high to clearly see what's going on here. So that will be 7 creature types that I think are for sure part of the Sylvan faction, and then we have a group of 4 where more than one could also belong to the faction in my opinion. And I know the 8 creatures per faction is just theory crafting on my part, but again, it's getting pretty crowded, right? And that will be basically every creature that I've been able to spot so far. If you've reached this part of the video, thanks for watching and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you know about any other creature that I may have missed, it will be really useful for everyone if you share it. I don't have much experience as a content creator, but I think I will try to keep doing this kind of videos for games that I like, and I look forward to bringing more content for Heroes of Might and Magic: The Olden Era. So if you enjoyed this and want to see more content like it, you can always leave a like and subscribe. I'm really excited about this game and I'm looking forward to learning more about it. Again, thanks for watching and I hope to see you here for future videos.